what we've been doing is your presentation, we can actually put it on here and you can run it right from here.
Okay, let's do that.
It's been the easiest and consistent because I know it works.
Yeah, I like that. Just email to you.
Yeah, and then I'll pop it up here for you.
All right.
Hope that doesn't go in spam. It's funny when my mom and I email each other, it happens to us sometimes.
Oh, really?
We've been doing it for like a decade and
Yeah.
still like, my mom's like, I didn't get that from you. Like, I told you I sent it.
I hope the client recently. I swear I did not get that property from you. I'm like, check your spam folder. I'm like, okay, we've been working together for 3 different transactions. Now I'm doing spam.
Now, do you like it in Google or in PowerPoint?
It doesn't really matter.
Okay.
I'm not going to read it. It's just, all
Yeah.
I need is the slides. So.
And I'll be around in case anything comes up, but basically it's just like your other Zoom. So you have control of the chat, the participants, you know, you push play on your thing and then share it. So everything's the same. It's already kind of acoustically set up so that this has a mic, this does not have a mic. I'll put up here too. Oh, so I should do some mic. And as you can tell, we're still getting dialed in.
Yeah, talk toward the computer. Should be easy enough.
Anytime I can, I try to do one because I want to really get this dialed in, like what's missing, what can we add?
Right. I think we'll probably be doing this for, I guess, ever at this point.
And just so you know, too, we're in the process of, I got to talk to Chris, getting a camera for our conference room 1.
Oh,
So that way, if you want to do a Zoom, you can do it in the conference room versus in the training room.
that's cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
Because we were doing a meeting the other day, and it's like, we don't need to be in this big old room. Okay, so here are participants. I think they all come in because there was no waiting room. There's that. Send it off. So why don't you have a look at it and see if there's any.
No, it works really well. What about putting it up on the other screen here?
Do you guys all moved in and everything?
Yeah. A couple more things I gotta move up there. But yeah, it's been great. All right.
And then when you present, it'll just pop up. I'll see if I can see it.
Okay, cool.
There's some weird things too.
Hopefully. Hey, can everybody hear me? Or can somebody let me know that you can hear me?
I can hear you.
We can hear you.
Perfect, thank you. How's everybody doing today? Too many questions.
Good. Great.
Good to hear. We're just getting set up over here. We're going to jump into it in just a second.
Welcome to the office, by the way.
Hey, thanks. Glad to be here. Loving it.
Yeah, you're set to go. So like when the presentation go up, so I'll make sure it pops up.
Okay, cool. So let me just start this from the beginning. Actually, I can't do that yet. I can be a little bit tech challenged here, so I'll do the best I can.
Let me know if it's gonna load.
Okay, so I've got that going. There we go. Okay, I'm not sure if I'm going to see my chat here anymore.
You'll see it on you, you just won't see it here. Does that make sense? Oh, I see what you're saying. I can do it here. Hold on.
Yeah, if you put it up there, because all I'm seeing right now is just my PowerPoint.
That's a great idea. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
See, that's what we're bringing.
That way, anybody that's in here, if you see a question come up, let me know I missed those things.
Yeah, good.
Cool. Alrighty. Let's check this thing. Cool. All right. Sorry.
Well, it's working.
It's working. I love it. All righty. Sounds good. Well, I'm going to jump into it. This is not going to be a super long class today. I like to keep this one really, really simple because door knocking should be really, really simple. I'm just basically going to share exactly what I did to get started in the business. Kind of just start to finish what my system looked like. And then you take it and run with it. I've worked with other people on the same system and people that really actually put it into action and do the steps and really do it consistently over a longer period of time. It's worked really well for them too. Really any kind of lead generation you do, if you do it a lot and you do it consistently, it's going to work at some level over time. It's just, it's always good to also hear about what other people are doing, what worked for them and kind of, maybe be able to avoid some of the pitfalls, that we hit. So this is going to be mainly I would say more focused on cold door knocking. I'll go over kind of the differences between the types of door knocking here in a second, but kind of a little bit about me. I got started in real estate in 2015, so it hasn't been a super long time. And I knew right off the bat that I needed just to do lead generation because I'd read everything Gary Keller had written at that point, and everything was leads, listings, leverage. And it was just listings. So I'm okay, well, how can I get listings consistently, and how can I get leads consistently? Because if I'm not putting someone new into my database that I can follow up with, my business isn't growing. And at the beginning, obviously, I had no business at all, so I needed it to grow at some level. And so I jumped into door knocking. I tried a bunch of different things. I tried a little bit of cold calling, which I think that's great too. It just wasn't really for me. I like to be face to face with people. And I think that works best for me. So I did some open houses that worked really well. I did door knocking, and I ended up settling on door knocking. And so when I really got focused on door knocking, I said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it consistently, 8 to 10 hours a week. And within that first 12 months of really starting that, that actually got me somewhere around 4 or 5 listings just from that, part of my business. So not counting open houses, not counting, friends, family, all, sphere of influence and all that. 4 or 5 transactions came straight from this, and they were all listings. So it's actually kind of funny. I know a lot of people, when you first get into the business, you think, okay, it's all about buyers. Listings are kind of scary. I hear that the majority of the time. For me, I was so listing heavy at the beginning of my business, which was awesome, that buyers actually made me a whole lot more nervous than sellers did. And so with those listings, it also helped me to get obviously more buyers, more listings, and all of that. So that's kind of how I got started. People always say, I feel like every time I talk to a newer agent that's just getting into the business and you ask them, how much money do you want to make or whatever in your first year? And it's almost always $100,000. So if you want to do that in your first year, or if you're just jumping in, or maybe you've been in the business for a while, you're restarting or whatever, if you want to do that in your first year, you absolutely can do that using this strategy. So let's jump on in. If anybody has any questions, at any point, we can talk about door hangers too. I kind of barely mentioned door hangers. That's a great way to, adding that into your farming is awesome. I don't really personally do the door hangers. I actually do more flyer drops. I just find that to be a little bit easier. A lot of the areas that I work in, the door handles can change so frequently that I'm always trying to figure out how to get them to stick and stuff, and I end up putting them under the mat anyway. And so just being able to do the exact same thing, I like systems. So when I can do the exact same thing over and over and over again without having that variable of trying to figure something out, that works best for me. So I do flyer drops, but and I'll talk a little bit about that. So if anyone, if you have a question, let me know. If something pops up in the chat and I miss it, if somebody could let me know, that'd be great. But yeah, what's door knocking? It's just a way of adding people to your database. It's great for looking for leads, but my main goal is always just to find a contact and put them into my database, regardless of whether or not they're a lead, because down the road, there's a good chance they're going to become one, or they're going to know somebody, that is. And so my main goal is just to grow my database as quickly as I possibly can. This is a great way to do it. Types of door knocking. So you got door knocking in your farm, and I would highly recommend having a farm and door knocking within your farm. So it's the best way to get business from your farm very, very quickly. You can mail to an area for years and years and years and still get more listings from that farm in your first year just by knocking on doors, even if you weren't to leave anything on the porch or mail them anything. throughout that entire time period. So really what you're doing is you're just adding a ton of rocket fuel to your farm right off the bat. So you can jump into that farm and take, 10% or more of the transactions in that farm in your first 12 months, as opposed to, mailing to it. And maybe after like the first couple of years, you get to 5% and then 10%. You can start off with 10% in your farm if you're doing this. If you're door knocking your farm, I would recommend, go out there maybe once a month and just drop a market update. Doesn't have to be a sales pitch every single time. If I'm doing cold doors, it's a little bit more of a pitch. If I'm just going out there every month and I'm just saying hi to people that I see all the time, it's more of a relationship builder. But at least quarterly, get out there into your farm. Cold doors, that's more mass prospecting. So that's like if you were to, do circle prospecting using like a Mojo dialer or something like that. And doesn't matter, who they are. You don't know if it's owner occupied, whatever it may be, whoever you're able to talk to, you talk to. And that's kind of what I'm going over mainly today. And so what I would recommend to people is if you're going to get into door knocking, do your farm first, split that up, figure out how often you want to do it, whether it's quarterly or every month or whatever it may be. I would probably recommend every month. So split that up, get that done first, because that's where you're going to get most of your business, and then expand outside of that. And when I say expand outside of that, I typically like to stay close to my farm because I'm probably going to expand to that area next. And it makes more sense for people in that area surrounding my farm to know who I am versus people that might live in a completely different zip code. Again, door knocking anywhere is going to get you business. What you're doing is you're creating a farm of Mets. You're creating a database of people that you've already met. Hot doors, expired, canceled, listings, FSBOs, those are awesome. And I'm embarrassed to say that that's not something I've really ever focused on all that much. And I should have. And I've lucked into them just by doing cold door knocking, where I knock on the door. It's funny because people are always scared of expired listings or whatever. I know people are worried that they're going to get yelled at. They were mad at the other agent. It didn't go well. Why would they want to talk to me? Until you do it by accident. So I knock on the door, I say hi, we start a conversation, and I find out that they had just expired 3 days ago. I don't know if they thought that I knew that already. I probably should have known that. I didn't look at the area that closely before I went out there. I had no idea. Otherwise, I would have been more nervous when I knocked on it. I don't know if they thought I did or not, but they were, we hit it off. I was the only person that actually knocked on the door. Lots of people were calling them all morning. I'm the only person that stood there and had a conversation with them. And they were listed the next week. So that it definitely does work. And for me, it's not as scary as it sounds, especially door knocking. When you pick up the phone, you call someone, they've already got 7 calls in the morning. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Definitely do it. Whoever keeps calling the longest is probably going to get that transaction. However, when you are the only person that shows up and talks to them in person, that can make a huge impact. So, and then obviously keep following up with them forever and ever and ever. So the pros of door knocking, highly personal, obviously. So you can build rapport very, very quickly this way. It's building a personal connection with your database, building more effective prospecting lists. We already covered that. Gary Keller's always talking about taking a not met to a met, because that is going to increase your ROI and your leads and your contacts exponentially. And so when you start with a database that's primarily built from door knocking, you're starting with a whole bunch of mets. And so that to me is extremely helpful, to where when I pick up the phone, I can say, hey, we met on your porch 2 or 3 months back, and they're saying, oh, absolutely. That's a very different conversation than, hi, my name's Brian. You don't know who I am. The cold calling thing is great. It just wasn't for me. And so I found that my reactions that I get when I'm talking to these people quarterly after I've already met them, it's really, really good. Plus I have a little bit of insight. We talked about, how long they've been in the neighborhood, what they've got coming up, vacations for the summer, all that stuff. So I can go back to that, bring that stuff up, and continue building rapport, and then find out what we can talk about the next time. Expedite mindshare and create a reputation as the local neighborhood agent. The best way I can kind of describe this is when I first started door knocking in my farm, I had been in door knocking in Morgan Hill for a little while. I went into a neighborhood in Blossom Valley, and it was my first day in that neighborhood ever. I think it was like 30 minutes in to me door knocking that neighborhood, and I met somebody that said, I am thinking about selling my house, and then we have to actually do it fairly quickly. And, first of all, I had to kind of calm down and be like, oh, okay, really awesome. I would love to help in any way that I can. And so really, I asked them after I got that transaction, because it was me and I was up against another agent that was huge in that area. They took like 20 80+% of the market in that area. And so when I said, hey, so just out of curiosity, why did you end up going with me? And her answer was, it's because I wanted to work with somebody that really knew the area and was, a real local agent and was out on the street. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, it's funny because that's the other agent. That's not me. I just showed up in this neighborhood today or, last week or whenever we were having that conversation. So I thought that was hilarious. And so what it really told me and taught me is you can erase like 30 years of somebody else's mailers by having a conversation with somebody because they probably haven't done that. And, if this agent's been in the business for 30 years and they're still mailing, that means that they probably have a lot of business. And so they probably aren't taking the time to go out and continue meeting the people in their farm. Some of them do, most of them don't. And so you can erase a whole lot of that mind share very quickly just by being the person that's in the neighborhood active right now. It's the easiest way to gather personal information from the seller, and that aids with follow-up conversations and rapport building. When I'm standing in front of somebody, our conversations just go deeper than they do when I'm on the phone. And so when I can have that conversation in person, I am getting more out of it and I'm actively listening and I'm actively, writing things down. Now, I don't sit there like a shrink and write down, everything that comes out of their mouth at all. I just have a conversation. I really, really, really listen. Then I walk a few doors down and I write down every single thing that they said. So with that, it's a lot easier you have all the information you need at this point because you have their address. As opposed to like an open house, you probably don't know where they live, or a lead that came in on the internet, you probably don't know where they live. So now I not only know where you live, I've got your phone number, I've got your email address. And what you'll find is, most people will say no to giving you their information, but a good amount of them will say yes. And if they give you their email address, there's a very high probability, like 80+%, that they're also going to give you their phone number too. And so you're just shoveling in leads into your database and contacts in your database that have the full information that you would want in order to keep following up with them. And the follow-up is typically where you're going to get most of your business, as everyone typically knows.
Brian,
Yes.
can we ask a question or do you want to wait till the
Oh,
end?
no, absolutely. Anytime.
Could you give us an example of a script for how you get their email?
Yeah, absolutely. And what I'll do is I can send out the script that I use to everyone. But basically, it's just I want to get your email by offering something of value. So I typically don't just say, hey, I'd like to stay in contact, which totally works. I know agents that do that. I'd like to stay in contact with you. What's your email address and phone number? For me, it's worked better to tie it to something that is of value. So I'll say, hey, what I really do for this area is a market report. And I'm just trying to help everybody to see, not only what's going on right now based on what I'm seeing with my listings and with my buyers, but I'm also letting people know what direction it looks like things are trending throughout the year so that you can plan. If you were thinking about selling, your property or refinancing or something 6 months from now, well, you might want to bump that up if I'm showing you that things are getting more and more and more expensive or things might be slowing down. Is that something I can email to you next month? So it's something like that. You let them think about it. Typically what you're going to get are two different people. Somebody that doesn't like to say no to anyone. And that's fine because they're still giving you their information. They still could become a lead at some point. A lot of times they do. Or you're going to get somebody that's actually interested in information for a specific purpose, which is really, really great. So once I get their email address, I kind of, I just say, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'll stay in contact with you. Let me know if you need anything. And I also like to just make sure I'm following up with everybody a few times a year just to make sure what I'm sending you is something you're even interested in at that point, just to make sure I'm not just annoying you. And I also want to just make sure that, if there's something I can do, a question that you have, I can be of value to you. What's the best phone number for me to give you a call? I don't ask, is it okay if I have your phone number? That's a yes or no question. It's a lot easier to say no to a yes or no question than no to just a straight up request. So, what I found is if they give me the email address and I ask for their phone number in that way, 85% I'm probably getting the phone number too. Does that answer your question? And I can send out my script to everybody after this too.
Super helpful. Thank you.
You bet. All right. So focuses on seller leads. One of my favorite pros of door knocking. I love sellers. It helps me to control my time, and they give me other buyers. They give me sellers. So that's huge. Extremely high ROI. That should go without saying. I mean, you're not paying for a Zillow lead. You're not paying thousands of dollars a month. You're not paying commission splits on something else, which all of those things are great, because making a certain percentage of, like everyone you always hear, making a certain percentage of something is better than everything, 100% of nothing. I can't even think today. Not enough coffee. But yeah, so basically, everything is great. If you're bringing money in, that's awesome. But with this, the cost is so low. you know, if you're farming, there's going to be, you know, some cost involved. So you're going to have to be more consistent. You're going to be sending out, you know, mailers to everybody and all that. If you're not there yet, all you really need to do is print out like 25 flyers for a day, and then just give them to the people that you're having conversations with. You know, so it's almost like, I guess it would be kind of similar with cold calling. You're kind of not leaving voicemails. But for me, when I left voicemails from cold calling, I rarely got a call back. So over the long term, it's very valuable if you're able to get into farming and leaving something every single month. Until then, just print out 25 for the day and just give them to the people that you talk to. And that's worked out really well. And that's what I did at the beginning of my business. And the ROI was, I mean, my cost was basically nothing. So outside of my shoes, I went through like 2 or 3 pairs of shoes every year, which I kept. I kept all of them. I'm going to make an art piece at some point. So when people ask, you know, how do you get started in the business? You got to wear out, you know, this many shoes. Okay, so fewer negative interactions in cold calling. This is like I kind of talked about a little bit earlier. Again, I don't want to badmouth cold calling for anyone that does it, because a lot of people are highly successful with it. I don't have a thick enough skin to do it. And so if I'm getting, you know, it's a lot easier for somebody to be, you know, mad at you over the phone than it is when they're standing directly in front of you. And with that said, when I first got into it, I was like, okay, I'm going to get door slammed in my face like half the time. And I'm like, at least half these people are going to yell at me. And then I went out the first day and everyone was super nice. I'm like, okay, that was clearly not, you know, they knew I was nervous because I didn't know what I was saying. I was stumbling over everything. You know, once I get really good at this, everyone's going to yell at me. And so after like, I don't know, a month and a half in, I'm starting to get more comfortable. I'm doing it like 10 hours a week and nobody's yelling at me. And so I realized, okay, I'm just going to put a check mark on the back of my notebook that I use to record everybody's information. And anytime I get somebody that's actually mad at me, not somebody that's saying, you know, I'm on my way out, I got to go to work. That's not somebody meeting me. That means I'm at their doorstep and they just don't have the time. That's me all the time. Like when I get a call, you know, and I can't take it right now, I just have to ignore it. It's not me being a jerk. It's just I'm busy at the moment. So I'm not going to put a check mark, you know, in my book for something like that. Or if the baby's crying, like, sorry, I got to go. If somebody was actually, you know, mad at me or cussed me out or slammed the door, I would put a check in the back of my book. 10 hours a week of door knocking that year. I think I had 1 or 2 checks in my book. And so, you know, people are a lot nicer than you think, especially when you're standing right in front of them. Great exercise, great for the mind. Who likes being cooped up in an office all day? It actually became like my favorite thing, because what I would do is I would just stick one of my AirPods in my left ear, because every time I would go to the door, I'd kind of back up like, you know, 5 or 10 feet, go to the side. So I'm not like standing like this in front of their door. That's scary. But I would kind of back up and stand like sideways. And so they can't even see that I have the AirPod in my ear, and I just got podcasts going all day long. So I'm just listening to things. It keeps me busy because I'm out there for 2 hours. You do it long enough, you're going to get so used to your script that, you know, you go to 20 doors in a row and nobody answers the door. You get kind of bored, you know, waiting for that person that you get to talk to. Listen to a podcast. You know, once you get really used to your script, you can be thinking about literally anything. And when that door opens, like, boom, you're like, okay, boom, into the script. So that's what I would do. And I loved it because I would have all my stress done at the office, and then I would just go kind of walk it off, get some exercise, get some fresh air, talk to some good people. The cons of door knocking, I put nothing, because I'm kind of curious about what y'all think. So does anybody, like, if you've been thinking about door knocking, which you probably at some level thought about door knocking because you're here, what would be the thing that holds you back? Anybody have anything?
Rejection.
Yeah.
I think they might want to know more answers right away rather than later. Sometimes they keep it like a list of questions.
Like the person at the door having a list of questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what? I like it when people at the door have a list of questions, because that probably means that they're a pretty good lead. So, you know, if they have a lot of questions, that's great. So for me, my main thing is I just want to make sure, you know, I either have the answers. If I don't have the answers, I'm very honest with them. I say, hey, you know what? I'm actually not sure off the top of my head. Let me give you a call. Boom. Now I'm going for your phone number again. So it's actually not even a bad thing, or their email address or whatever. The one thing I would say is make sure you know what's on whatever you're passing out. So I would do a postcard, and it's got, you know, neighborhood stats. It's got, you know, the list to sale ratio, price per square foot, that kind of thing. I actually took price per square foot off, actually. That one got really confusing for people, because they'd always look at it and they'd be in an 1,100 square foot or like a 2,500 square foot house, and the house 2 doors down was 1,200 square feet. And they're like, oh my God, my house is worth $6 million. This is great. So I took that one off, but you want to know what's on your card. because sometimes people will ask the same question because they haven't looked at your entire card yet. And if you're sitting like, I should know this, because you're no longer the neighborhood expert at that point. So make sure you know what's on your card. Another thing, just a quick tip based on that, is I would print out the market activity for the entire area that I'm door knocking that day. Just a quick CMA, just because that way, when someone says, hey, do you know what happened? What did that home on the other block sell for? I'm supposed to be the neighborhood expert. It's a lot better for me to say, actually off the top of my head, I can't remember because I'm thinking like 2 or 3 different ones at the same time. Let me check. Boom. You got it right there and you can tell them. So I really would recommend that. Any other cons, anything that's kept you from door knocking that I can cover? And I know you said rejection, which is huge. And I'll just take that back to, I get less rejection doing door knocking than I even got at open houses getting information. So yeah, it's actually a lot lower than you might think. Let's see. Okay, having to walk so much. Yeah, you have to be able to walk, pretty good distance. It's just the way it is. Then again, you get really great exercise. I mean, I've never been in as good shape when I was, out there walking for 10 hours a day on top of any exercise I was already getting. So, if you can't walk long distances, this probably isn't the thing for you. But if you can, it's absolutely awesome. Assuming you will be ready, not. What's that? Yeah, if you can go back to it. I'll read that one. I'm not sure what I've missed here. What's the best opening one to say right away? Okay, yeah, well, I'll cover that really quick. So, and that'll be in my script too. Basically what I do is I just say, hey, my name is Brian. I'm just a local realtor. Wanted to drop off some market updates today and just wanted to introduce myself and say, hi, can I leave one for you? And then I hand it to him. And then the next thing out of my mouth is, don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to buy a house or sell a house or anything crazy like that, I promise. And so at that point, and when you see that, you'll see that on the script that I send out. That's been a really great statement for me because I get a few different reactions. I either get, yeah, absolutely. No, we've been in this neighborhood forever. They're taking me out feet first. You hear that a lot. And so boom, not a lead. I'm not going to try as hard, if it's somebody that's absolutely adamant that they don't want to ever move. Then again, sometimes they do. I have sold houses for people that have told me they're not going to move. So if they give me their information, I'm certainly going to keep it, but I know that they're at least not now a lead. Then you'll get the person that's completely silent. So then you want to do more digging, and you'll see that in the script. There's some more questions that I ask. One of my catch-all questions, if I'm like, is it a lead? They seem like a lead. They're asking questions like a lead, but they're not saying anything. I'll just say at the end of it, hey, I'm actually curious because I've been asking everybody today. It seems like every time I sell a house lately, everybody's going to Idaho, Texas, Seattle, places like that. So if you were to leave this neighborhood, do you think you would stay in California or do you think you'd head out of state? With that question, I can find out their future plans. So if I didn't know if they were a lead at that point, that typically helps me to figure it out. So that's kind of most of my script right there, but I'll send the rest of it out. Was there anything I missed on the question side? That's it? Okay, cool. All right, so yeah, I mean, I don't like talking about cons of door knocking because I like it so much, but yeah, you do really have to be able to walk long distances. If you're absolutely terrified of dogs and you're not willing to get over that fear, it could be rough. You'll need a lot of furry, friends. So just know that. But yeah, if you like dogs, then it's a really great way to meet a whole bunch of them. Okay, so what kind of results can you expect? Here's my rule of thumb, and this is actually based off of a low inventory market because I've mainly operated to this point in my entire career in a mainly low inventory market. And so what I would find is 1 hour of door knocking per week, assuming you're doing that 48 weeks a year, you're taking vacations and all that stuff, should result in about half a transaction in 12 months. Now, this is going to go up as inventory goes up. More sellers means more transactions. My first year was actually closer because we did have a little more inventory. It was closer to like 3/4, and so if you're going to go out and let's just say, okay, I'm going to go out 8 hours a week. I'm going to go 4 days a week. I'm going to take a day off in the middle. You're probably going to get 4 or 5 transactions and they're probably all going to be listings, or maybe one of them's a buyer, And so in this area, you're looking already at like $5 million in sales. So you just made the $100,000 that you were looking for. And so this is average over 5 years of 5.5 years of doing it or whatever. Obviously I stopped when COVID hit and I'm actually back at it now. And honestly, the little bit of door knocking I've done so far, and hopefully it doesn't change with more things coming up from the CDC and all that stuff. Assuming we keep doing it, people are actually pretty friendly. I'm getting very few people. I still wear a mask just to, I think that's going to probably increase my open rate, but almost nobody's answering the door in a mask. Everyone seems pretty friendly. Nobody has looked at me. I had one person that was a little bit like, but pretty much everybody's been friendly. So, right. Immediate results. So let's talk about the results that you can get. So you get your immediate results. Those are your appointments set on the spot. And this is probably the lowest amount of business. Well, no, when I say immediately, it's, I kind of have it. It's a little bit confusing the way I have it written here, but these are like the ones that are like, I'm ready to go right now. And you will get those. I've had a lot of people when I get you, I'm not going to ask you to buy a house or sell a house or anything crazy like that. People will tell me they're a lead without even realizing what they're doing. They might not want me to know that yet. They might not want me to market at them because they don't know me yet, but people like to be right. And people like to have news that you don't have. And so if they're right and they feel like they know something that you don't know and you just told them the opposite, a lot of times they'll be like, well, actually, and I'm like, boom, gotcha. And they'll be like, yeah, I'm thinking about putting my house on the market. I've had multiple times where people are saying, actually, we're going to call a real estate agent. And I've done same day listing appointments, 3 day later listing appointments, and so the immediate results are great. Then you've got your referrals for buyers or sellers that, are going to be moving within 12 months. That's awesome too. I've had a lady across the street say, actually, the woman right across the street, I just talked to her. She's going to put her house on the market in 2 months or something. I'm like, great, I'm going to run over there really quick and say hi because there's a car in the driveway and I want to make sure I talk to them before they leave. And I took that listing. So you'll get stuff like that. And then leads for out of area sales and purchases, which are the easiest thing you could possibly do because you just send them to someone else and eventually you get a check. So those are great. Delayed results. These are my favorite now. They weren't my favorite then because you always want the lead right now. And I didn't have a lot of leads at the time. But this is where you're going to get the majority of your business. Years down the road, when you've been marketing to these people, when you're doing your quarterly calls, and people that weren't leads before become leads, or people that were 12 months out, but they put it on pause, now it's 2 years out, all those guys, you're going to end up doing a lot of business there. And that just grows and grows and grows, especially if you're consistent, because they're going to learn to trust you more and more and more. So referrals from past or current clients, also great, because people are going to work with who they know, like, and trust. And, if they were referred to you by somebody that they trust, you already have that in order. So always know your numbers. Again, I love systems. And so I recorded my numbers very, very early. It allows you to track your performance. So if you all of a sudden, maybe you change scripts or something like that. If you don't track your numbers, you're not going to know, okay, which script works better. I can go back and I'd be like, hey, this is where I changed my script. And then things kind of fell off from there. So let me go back to that script. Or there was a while I was even tracking the type of clothes I was wearing. Found out it doesn't matter at all what I was wearing. But I tracked that for a while to see, okay, if I'm out in a suit, do I get more leads than if I'm out in jeans and a t-shirt? The answer is no. So don't worry about that. That's actually really nice to know. Obviously, if I'm going to go to a listing appointment, I'll be in a suit. But if I'm at the front door, I don't need to be. Are people telling you that they're the only agent door knocking their home COVID your side? Occasionally people will be like, oh yeah, I get people knocking on the door all the time, but typically it's different types of people, like pest people, solar people, and all that stuff. I'll even ask like, oh, awesome, like which agent have you been talking to? And they're like, oh, actually it was solar guy. I'm like, okay, well, I got no solar to sell you today. Typically I'm the only person in the neighborhood that's actually door knocking. Sometimes there's like one other, and they're usually not as consistent. So yeah, as far as favorite database for tracking info, there's a lot of them out there. I'm actually looking for a new one now. I always just tracked it in Excel. So I just kind of put in there and that worked well for me. I would send everyone that spreadsheet, but something happened, everything got messed up on it. And so I need to get that fixed. Thankfully, my little sister's an Excel whiz. So once I get that done, hopefully next week or two, I can send that out too. But I would track a lot of stuff. So allows you to, if you're going to build a team, it allows you to track their numbers. How does a brand new door knocker, how are they doing in general? If you put somebody else in there, they've been doing it for 3 months and they have absolutely terrible results, opposed to everybody else on the team, then you can say, okay, maybe there's a different thing that you can do. This isn't working quite right. Or what can we do to fix that? Or are you using the script? Whatever, that looks like. Allows you to plan and scale your business. You can't scale something that you don't understand. Like if you don't have a number, you can't multiply it. I'm not a math magician, so I know that there's some caveats to all that stuff. But in general, with business, if you know your numbers, you can multiply it and build it up. Obviously, with door knocking, you're going to be limited by the amount of time you can get out there. But if you have somebody that you're partnering with, you can scale that up pretty quickly. Keeps you motivated to move forward. You'll go through dry spells, but you'll knock on doors for, I don't know, 2 hours a day for 3 days in a row, and not a single person gives you their information. No leads. And then you're sitting there like, why am I even doing this? When you go back and look at your numbers and you can say, okay, I make X amount of dollars, whether I knock on the door, there's a no soliciting sign, I can't knock on the door, I knock on the door and it's the one person this year that's going to slam the door in my face. I'm still getting X per dollars per door regardless. And so it all works out over the long term. And if you're tracking the numbers, it really helps to stay motivated. This is the sheet. This is as simple as it is. This is what I use. I literally print out these on postcard paper. And then I put a little piece of cardboard in it just to kind of firm it up a little bit. And I bind it with, the tools that you can get, relatively affordably. And what I do is I just have these and I'll throw my postcards right inside there and I can pull one out and hand it to them. And I've still got that right in front of me and I can record that stuff. So, name, email address, phone number, and notes. And then up at the top, I like to put the route. And so I'll kind of go over mapping routes here in a minute, but I'll put the route up there so that I know, how to tag them later in command, because I want to make sure I'm always tagging people and I know where they're at. Time started and time completed, that's more to keep me accountable, but also to know what my lead per hour is and, dollar per hour and all that stuff, total doors on the route. A lot of the stuff down below, I tracked for a while, doors attempted versus total opens and all that stuff. I'm not as concerned about the no attempt thing. I'm not as concerned about that stuff on the bottom anymore, but the stuff on the top, I would definitely record. Pick your routes. So where do you see yourself farming in the future? Because if you're going to spend a lot of time door knocking and you're going to be out there frequently, at least quarterly, you're going to get to the point where you're going to really want to actually farm that area as money is coming in. So, door knocking where you see yourself farming is really important. Is it scalable? So if I'm thinking long term, I'm going to farm this whole area. I'm going to avoid areas like for instance, in Morgan Hill, there's a street that runs through there. I think it's called Spring Street or something like that. There are 200 homes there. And there's like one mail route that goes through there and then it kind of deviates up into the hills. And so it's kind of hard to do EDDM, every door direct. If you have questions about that, let me know. I use that all the time. And so outside of that though, it's surrounded by almost nothing. So it's this great neighborhood of 200 homes, which I love to sell there when I get a lead, but I can't expand out of there. I'm not getting any bleed over, so if I've got a bunch of my open house signs in there, the only people that are seeing them are the people that live in that neighborhood, not the people that live in the neighborhoods outside of it that just happen to be driving through. There's no main streets where they're gonna be so it helps for me to say, okay, can I expand outside of this? Can I find a place that has minimum of 500, 1,000 homes, something like that? And is it in an area where I can go 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 and keep expanding out from there? Is the turnover worth it long term? Obviously, you want to look at turnover when you're looking at farming anything, but especially door knocking, because if you're in an area where the turnover rate's like 1% a year, probably not the place you want to door knock, because it's going to take you quite a while to get the lead that's actually going to happen. And maybe it's a higher price lead or whatever, but I would definitely look at a place that has, like right now, 3.5%, 4% per year turnover with our lower inventory. That's pretty good. And I would imagine that 3.5% inventory is going to turn into more like 5 or 6 or 7%. At some point when we have a lot more inventory in the market. And then is the turnover enough for your one way, basically? So, if you're just getting into the business and you've got like 3 to 6 months before you have to go get a job again, make sure you're in an area where you can get some money coming in really, really quickly. Don't jump into that neighborhood like, wow, the homes are $3 million. If I can just get one of those with a super low turnover rate, you're probably going to pass that 6 months and have to go back to work before you get the deals to happen. So, okay, create a map of your route. So this is important. It saves you time. I mean, if you're going to do one area and you're going to get to know it really, really well, eventually you're not going to have to think about it as much. However, this will save you, because what happens to me, or what happened to me at the beginning, is if I didn't map my routes out, I didn't know where the borders were. So I'm looking at a map. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go up here, and then I would get lost, and I would cross the wrong street. I would end up in a different route, and then I would go out to do that route the next day. And I'm like, I feel like and then I don't know for sure. And then I would find myself skipping entire sections and streets and things. So I'm like, I think I knocked this yesterday. Maybe I didn't. This is going to help you to knock on every door and know it's not somebody you just talked to yesterday. And I have knocked on the same person's door twice in a row within a 10-minute period and pitched them both times. That was probably me listening to the podcast and not paying enough attention to what they look like. And it's pretty embarrassing. And if you're wondering whether that's going to happen or not, it's a lot more difficult, to feel the confidence that you need to really get this done. So that's going to look something like that. And so this is what I use. This is called My Maps. it's a Google, thing, but it's not Google Maps. So if you search Google, backslash map, whatever, you're going to get Google Maps. You're not going to get this. This has tools that the other one doesn't have. So just Google in your search engine, Google Maps, and it's going to probably be the top result. But it allows you to draw colors like this. I can leave notes on there. I can click on one of those routes and I can put every single person in there that I talk to. I can put the leads that are in there, any expired listings, things like that. I also color code it. So this means that I actually haven't been out there in like 6 months. I don't really knock this route much anymore, but I would color code it by quarters because that's how often I was going out. And so I could look from an aerial view and be like, okay, this section I need to go to. It's been a long time. Let's get out there. And then once I would finish, I would just put the date in there and then change the color. So that's how I do that. If you zoom in a little bit, you can see even the houses. And so without even going into Realist and all that stuff, I would just go through here and be like, okay, I want to do about 120 houses. And I just be, boop, 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 boop. And I would count them all, build my route. And that would 120 to 130 houses would take me about 2 hours. And so that's what I would do there. And so at the beginning of my route, I can say, okay, I'm going to start up here at Bangor Ave. I'm going to go down Bestwick. I'm going to come back up, and you can kind of figure, okay, this is my walking path. You get a good idea of what that's going to be, so you don't end up walking down Bestwick and then you cross over Pence and then you're down that way and you're into another route. If you look at that ahead of time, it's really helpful. Okay, invest in an item of value. So basically, this is just something that you're going to hand them. I call it my ticket to a conversation. And so it's just a postcard for me. I print them out half sheet. I build them on Michael Lewis Marketing. I just kind of, what I do is I just do 2 front pages on the thumbnails. I'll put 2 fronts, 2 backs, and print it out double-sided. And that's what I do, just cut them straight down the middle. And once you get used to that, you can knock them out really, really quickly. So definitely invest in some item of value. At the end of the day, you can just hand your business card, let them know you just want to be a value to them, if you wanted to start that way. This is what it looks like. I'm terrible at PowerPoint, so there's really not a line that goes to the top there. That's just couldn't delete it. But this is what it looks like. This is back when I was using price per square foot before I removed that. Blossom Valley, it's not $1 million anymore for a single family home in Blossom Valley. And this is the back. So it's a little bit about me, what I do, what I offer, all that. Don't forget the handbill permit. And I'm going to guess that the handbill permit changes between Campbell office and.
I would think so. No,
So.
I think so.
I'll just say no laws in the area that you're door knocking in. San Jose is pretty easy. Morgan Hill, I think in the South Bay area, from what I understand, I'm pretty sure San Jose is the only one that has some kind of a permit number. So I guess, talk to Quan or something.
Yeah,
probably know.
Talk to Quan or Chelsea.
Yeah.
If they don't know, they'll get it from Mike.
Right, because this is probably not the right one, so I wouldn't write that down. But outside of that, I think there are some areas in the North Bay, like Palo Alto. I think that there's some other rules, regulations. I'm not even sure if you can door knock there. But in this area, it's actually pretty easy to do. San Jose is the only place that I really need it. Memorize a script. So this is important. You can deviate off the script. Just know the things that you really want to hit. I want, if somebody wants to kind of deviate and talk a little bit, I want to let them do that. I just want to make sure that I control the conversation back. If you ever read, if you read the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, one of the best books you could ever read for sales, you will learn that people are most interested in what they want to say. And if you allow them to talk, they will think that you're the best conversationalist of all time. Case in point, I had a conversation recently with somebody about college football, and I don't know literally anything about college football at all. I follow the NFL at some level, but not college football. And by the time I left, he was like, you know what, if I ever sell my house, I'm definitely going with you. It's rare to find somebody that has your level of interest, in college sports. And I'm just like, awesome. Great. Looking forward to talking to you a lot more about that at some point. And so I just let her talk. And I just kind of nodded, agreed. I'm like, yeah, that's really awesome. Oh, that's really cool. And so you can have a conversation with somebody without saying much because people like to talk. So let them. Just bring them back to where you want them to get, So once they kind of slow down, bring them back to the conversation within your script. But as far as your script is concerned, everybody has one. You are going to develop a script, whether you like it or not. If you do something over and over and over and over again, a script is going to form because we as human beings don't want to come up with something creative every single time. The only question is, are you using one that actually gets you leads? And so you're going to be scripted. And if you have a good script, you practice it every single day. By the time you've been door knocking with the same script for 2 or 3 weeks, it's going to sound very natural. For sure. And even when it wasn't natural, my first time, out door knocking, I got 2 leads and I only had half my script memorized. Log your results and update your maps. Kind of talked about that a little bit already. Update your lead tracking spreadsheet, update the date and all that stuff. We kind of talked about that already. And then add the prospect to your database and set follow-up systems. So I enter as much information I can possibly enter about them. I tag everybody, and I'll talk about that a little bit as well, but I'm always keeping really, really good notes because it's a much more powerful conversation to say, hey, yeah, when we were talking on your porch a couple months ago, you were headed to Disneyland with the in-laws. How was that? Was it, you know, like you can have that conversation as opposed to, yeah, we met on your porch a couple of months ago. Is there anything you need today? I'm going to get to that question, but I would rather build more of a connection and a friendship, and then also take down notes about what can I bring up next time. Because obviously I'm not going to bring up Disneyland every time I talk to them. And so just making sure that you're staying on top of your notes, then segment your groups well. And so I like to have at least, is it a buyer versus a seller? Because if I want to pull all my sellers and send them seller-only information, a quick tip or something like that, I want to be able to do that. Area buyer and seller. If you're doing multiple areas, if you have a farm in Cambrian versus Blossom Valley or whatever, I'll put them there too, just because I want to be able to send out Blossom Valley information or Cambrian, information. If there's some big construction project that's happening nearby or whatever, I can talk about that and not send it to people that are in a completely different zip code and don't care. Neighborhood, that too, because if you're door knocking a lot, then you can end up in different little micro neighborhoods and stuff. And so if you wanted to do something specific for one neighborhood, that's nice as well. And then clearly you want to put what kind of lead they're in. So 1 to 6 months, 6 to 12, 12 to 24, and I have a 24 plus also. And then every time you talk to them, obviously you want to be looking at it. If I can't get a hold of them, I'm still going to shorten that and put them. So if it's been a little while, they might go from the 12 to the 6 to 12. Or if I have that conversation, they say, actually, it's looking more like, 3 years down the road or whatever, I can update them at that point. So here's an example. So Angela Smith would like to sell her Blossom Valley home within the next 6 months. She was just offered a job in Austin, Texas. That's something I can talk to her about. Again, would like to move as soon as her daughter graduates from 6th grade. So I can bring up, the transition. Is there anything you need out there? I can bring up, the graduation, all that stuff, because clearly that's going to be very important to them. And then phone number, email address, and all that stuff. And then, they're going to be, let's say they're in Blossom Valley. It's going to be a Blossom Valley seller. You can do a specific neighborhood with this much time as far as lead time. Would be kind of the basics. Client management. So let's kind of jump into that a little bit. Verify the data and update your CRM. Before I enter them, I check Realist just to make sure I have names spelled correctly and all that stuff. So once I do that, then I'll add them to command. And then we kind of talked about status, first name, last name, subtype, phone number, all that stuff. Just make sure all that's good to go. And then add to your campaign. So whatever you're using, if you're using an 8x8 and then a 486 touch or whatever it may be, just get them into the campaign right off the bat. Don't put it off. You're going to lose leads and all that stuff. So just get it done and make sure that they're all on a high touch campaign, whatever that looks like to you. That's not really this class. I won't really go into that, but make sure that everyone's on the campaign. And then if it's in your farm, then you can do the whole EDDM thing as well. I would recommend, getting something out there like once or twice a month. So, for me, I door knock the whole thing every month, and then I do an every door direct mail once a month as well. And so they're getting something on their something in their mailbox, and then they're either having a conversation with me or finding something on their porch every single month.
So Brian, to clarify, you're saying you knock once a month in a neighborhood. So if you're making contact with a particular house, are you circling back and talking to them again? Or are you trying to hit the doors that people didn't open?
No, I want to talk to them. So if it's in my farm, so I'll clarify that. If it's cold doors, I'm probably not going every single month because I'm doing a different script. I'm not going to go to the same house every single month and say, hey, do you want to, I'm not going to ask you to buy a house or sell a house or anything crazy like that. I'm not going to do that every single month because at that point, they're probably going to get, catch on to that. Quarterly, I find you can do it because people don't, you think that you're like super predictable and everyone's going to remember exactly what you said, when typically they're not even really listening too much to you at the very beginning of the conversation. They're kind of wondering who you are and what's going on. So like, they're not going to catch on like you think that they might. In a farm, I would recommend getting out there in person every month. Or quarterly at least, but it's a quick conversation at that point. You're just saying, hey, Brian, me, Brian again, just wanted to check back in, drop off the latest market update. How you guys doing? Anything you need? That kind of a thing would be something that I would do every month.
And can I ask another follow-up question on that?
Yes.
Sorry.
No.
With your cold door knocking, how successful or what's the ratio you've pretty much seen on your ROI with the cold knocking.
Right. So that'll kind of go back to those original numbers that I put together, where it's, you know, that 1 hour per week done over 48 weeks throughout the year consistently would net me, you know, about half to one transaction in that same 12-month period. And when I created those numbers, it was basically off the first like 2 years. So everybody was pretty cold at that point. And actually everyone was cold at that point because I didn't start farming like I should have at that time. Everything was cold. Like I said, I was so concerned that people would, you know, remember my script or whatever, saying the same thing again, that I would wait like 6 months, a year to get back out there. And so basically everything was cold. So if you're going out there consistently, it should be a lot better. What's the best time of day to go door knocking? Whenever you can do it consistently. Whenever you can get out there and you can door knock consistently, you know, however many times you want to get it done every week, that's the best time to go door knocking. So if the afternoon is best for you, go in the afternoon. If the morning's best, go in the morning. You're going to get a few more opens in the afternoon. But if I only make it out half the time that I want to make it out, because I do get busy in the afternoons, if I only go out 50% of the time, I'm getting way less leads than if I had just done it in the morning and gotten it done and out of the way. That said, in the morning, you're also meeting a lot of, you know, you're meeting a lot of people that are retired and things like that, that might be looking at making a move. And I found that most of my best leads have come from talking to a few less people, but the people that are home in the morning versus everybody coming home at like 4 o'clock and they just bought the house last year or whatever. So anytime that you can get out and have conversations consistently is gonna be the best time. All right. Okay, we talked about all that. Set your reminders. Everybody in your database should have some sort of a task associated with them and or a smart plan. So make sure everyone's on a smart plan immediately, because it might sound crazy if you don't have a lot of leads or you have like 5 people in your database or 100 people or whatever. You probably remember the name and address of every single person in there that's a good lead. Years down the road, you're going to start losing business because you're going to be like, oh, that guy told me literally 6 months ago that he was 100% selling his house. I didn't put him into a smart plan. He's not in a quarterly. He's not in any of that, and no lead follow-up, none. And all of a sudden they sell their house, you know, and I've lost a bunch of business that way. So just make sure that everybody gets on a smart plan. And make sure that when the smart plan ends, you're resetting that smart plan and all of that. And then, you know, adding tasks too, if you want to do something over and, you know, above and beyond that. Follow up immediately. So I send an email typically the day after. So I kind of like to keep reminding them of me as they forget. So if they met me on the porch, typically I'll send an email out the next day. The email is not just an email. I use a service called BombBomb, and you could do a text too, which would be free. I think I paid $50 a month for BombBomb. But what I do is I sit in front of my computer and my webcam with a little whiteboard that's got their name on it. Just says, let's say, you know, it says, "Hi, Rob." And I'm holding that up and that becomes the thumbnail. So when they open the email, it's a silly picture of me sitting there with a play button in front of my face, holding a sign with their name on it. And my click rate on that's really high because people are curious as to what's going on. So, and it's just a quick conversation. It's like, hey, you know, thank you so much for taking the time to chat yesterday. Really enjoyed meeting you. Here's my email. If you need anything at all, let me know. I'll make sure to follow up in the future. So, something simple like that. So they met me on their porch. They're starting to forget about the conversation. And the next day, all of a sudden, now they got an email from me. You know, I'm the silly dude with the sign. And then 3 days after that, I send a handwritten thank you card. So people will open these. Don't make it look super businessy. You know, make it look personal. So I go to like Walmart, and they have, I think I can buy like for like $10 or something. I think I get like 40 Hallmark cards with envelopes. And so, you know, it's pretty cheap. And then when I'm going and I'm putting them into the database, I just kind of write that down. The way I did it before is I had like a thing with slots in it. And so this was like, these go out on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And so I would send it out 3 days after they get the email. And so whatever day that is, I just put it in the slot that's like, you know, coordinates with 3 days later. So at that point, what they're going to end up with is now they met me. Next day, they get the silly email. And then 3 days after that, they're forgetting again. And boom, they get the Hallmark card. And it's saying literally exactly what I said in the email video. And then after that, they're in a normal plan. So at that point, I've made enough of an impact, I feel, in the first week. I almost never have somebody that I call for their first quarterly call, and everybody should be on a quarterly call plan, regardless of whether or not they're a lead. Almost never do they say, "Oh, I don't remember who you are." It's always like, "Oh yeah, that was a great conversation," or whatever, you know. So that definitely helps. And then reconnect. So like I just said, quarterly calls for literally everyone. The only time that changes for me is if I've been calling for years and never gotten a hold of them, but every time I send a text, I get a text response. In that case, I put them on a quarterly text plan as opposed to a quarterly call plan. So, you know, Yeah, I think that's that's all I'll say about that. And then repeat. That's it. Just be consistent. Again, whatever time you can get out consistently, that's the time. Put it in your calendar. And I have told people I can't meet at this time. I've got an appointment at that time. And you do. You have an appointment to go get some leads. And so protect that religiously. And that's about it for me. I don't think I have any more questions there. So does anybody have a question?
I had, I've only door knocked once, but I got about 4 or 5 listings from it if you want to hear why it worked.
Yes. You be teaching this. I don't know what I'm doing here.
I was a brand new agent. It was 89. I was doing my very first newsletter to my farm where I lived when the earthquake hit and I lost my newsletter. And because of the damage, once I could read the news, I put together quick flyers at home on my home printer saying if anyone's got donations for the earthquake victims in the Santa Cruz Watsonville area, my mom and I are hand driving or personally driving them down there. And I hand walked my whole townhome complex. Of course, it had my name and phone number on it. And we took 5 van loads down there. And then the very next newsletter they got was from Jennifer Moore, Century 21, saying thank you to everyone in our townhome complex for all the donations. My mom and I got 5 van loads directly to the people at the evacuation center at the fairgrounds. And people remember that.
Yeah.
They said, oh, you're the one that came to my door and picked up the donations from me. And so then they didn't resent when they saw my flyers. They thought, whoa, she's a good person. So I would say if you could give something of value or do something nice when you make the contact, the stigma of, oh, you're a real estate agent trying to get my listing goes away.
Right. No, that's awesome. Yeah. And I think in a farm, especially, stuff like that is super important, so when I'm going out to do cold doors, and I'm kind of all over the place and all that stuff, it's more of I'm going after the contact and the lead. But if you're in your farm doing, fundraising types of things, all that stuff, I think is huge. I love that. Thank you. Any questions, anything else? Anybody have something they want to add? Yeah, go ahead.
Just a quick one. So like in my situation, would you recommend like I speak Spanish too or something like that? Like the focus on the area that segments to Spanish speaking or?
Yeah, I mean, if there's a market that you can get into that fewer people are in, yeah, absolutely. We had an agent in our office that she moved here from Brazil, and so she connected with a lot of other people that moved here from Brazil, and I think she did like $12 million, in her second year of doing that. So, yeah, absolutely, I think that'd be a great idea. Anything else? We're right about on time. Everybody good? Get you out 2 minutes early? All right, well, thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate it. Let me know if you have any questions. I should have put that, actually, it's probably on here. So that's my email, brian.porter, Brian with an I at kw.com. Reach out. I can certainly send you the script I use. I can send you, the data sheet template that I use, the postcards if you want to take a look at how I do them. Obviously, you're not going to be able to change them, but you can go in and make your own. So let me know if you need anything, and I'm happy to help. All right. Thanks so much. Talk to you guys later.
Thank you.
All right.
Cool.
Thank you.